Hello, and thank you for joining us for this presentation about Care and Share's Service Area Assessment. Equity has a geography, letting our communities lead the way. A healthy system requires permeable boundaries, meaning feedback is flowing in and out all the time. A forest, for example, is a living, breathing system that is essentially permeable. Water, sunlight, oxygen, and living creatures are moving in and out of it all the time, giving and receiving all kinds of elements of life. And it's that motion, that back and forth, that giving and receiving that keeps the forest alive and vibrant. We at Care and Share are committed to becoming a healthier, more vibrant system by leaning into this concept of permeability. We thrive when we are continually giving and receiving feedback. So today, we are here to share with you what we did to hear from our neighbors and communities, what we found out, and what we're going to do about it. You've already met Marie, your new Rocky Mountain Regional Manager, and my name is Nadia Fisher, and I'm the Service Insights and Analytics Manager for Care and Share. This means that my job is to collect and analyze information about the areas and neighbors we serve. Couple of definitions before we jump in. You may have noticed that we use the word neighbor. We prefer neighbor instead of something like client or guest because anyone can need help at any time. And the people who are accessing our free food pantries are from right next door. They're our neighbors. And when we use the term partners, we mean the agencies and organizations who have partnered with us to distribute food to the 29 counties in our service area. Care and Share brings in food through donations and purchases, and then we ship it out to our 287 partner agencies who distribute it to our neighbors every week. We literally could not do what we do without them, and we appreciate you all so much. So in July of 2024, we began a thorough assessment of the communities we serve. And this is new. We've never done anything like this at this scale before. This presentation, this right here, is an example of our commitment to being intentional about how we show up for you in our communities and how we share with you the feedback that we've been receiving. These are first steps in a journey toward becoming a vibrant, flowing, thriving system that responds to and is driven by the voices of our community. So in conducting this assessment, what stood out most clearly is that geography matters. As you will soon see, we serve a remarkable variety of different regions, communities, populations, and cultures. And in order to meet our primary goal of equitably distributing food to all of our neighbors, we need to understand and respond to those differences. So as we began collecting information about our 29 counties, we looked for areas where people aren't getting what they need, where the geography of our state might be an issue, or where people might be facing barriers due to their culture or language or origin. In other words, where our passion for equity might not be achieving everything we wanted it to. The goal was and continues to be to listen to the neighbors and partners we serve, to find out what's going well and how we can do better. And we were genuinely excited about this opportunity to hear directly from our partners and neighbors. So, what did we do? The service area assessment conducted 11 listening sessions in 7 different counties with both partners and neighbors. We rolled out a survey that collected over 2,000 responses, 70 from here in the Southwest. We looked at Feeding America data, census data, neighbor intake data, and our own internal data. And from all of this information, we identified 3 major priorities as a focus for the next year: advocacy, culturally relevant food, and an agency academy. Keep an eye on these icons. They're going to show up soon. So what did we hear from our Southern Colorado neighbors? Many neighbors left comments describing their experiences with hunger, food access, and food pantries. One neighbor said, "I can afford unhealthy, inexpensive, prepackaged garbage, but we can rarely afford fresh fruits and vegetables on a consistent basis. Another neighbor commented, I do get food stamps, but despite my efforts to scrimp and save, I run out at least 1 to 2 weeks before the next month. In addition to the comments, our survey included the Food Insecurity Experience Scale, used worldwide by organizations like World Hunger to quantify the experience of hunger. This scale asks 8 questions, such as, during the last 12 months, was there a time when, because of a lack of money or other resources, you were worried you would not have enough food to eat? Please note the phrase, because of a lack of money or other resources here. So when the question asks if someone skipped a meal, we're not talking about fasting or dieting. Some of us may have gone a whole day without eating for a variety of reasons, but here it's specifically because there was no food available. So when someone answers 7 or 8 of these questions with a yes, they are considered severely food insecure. By contrast, up to 3 yes answers is considered food secure. Our survey showed that 54.2% of neighbors across southern Colorado identified themselves as severely food insecure. Another 26.7% showed moderate food insecurity, meaning they answered yes to 4 to 6 of the questions you just saw. Neighbors across southern Colorado told us in comments and focus groups that what drove them to seek out our services were things like insufficient benefits, disabilities, illness, mental health issues, or family circumstances such as death, divorce, domestic violence, or other impacts to income and financial situations such as moving, homelessness, high costs, or lack of employment. Neighbors expressed a lack of information, not knowing where to go to access free food, not knowing what the requirements were or whether they would qualify, or having trouble navigating the system or websites. Many neighbors also expressed gratitude for our services. They told us that food pantry staff and volunteers were kind and welcoming and treated them with respect and dignity. Neighbors also told us very clearly what kinds of foods they were hoping to see at our pantries, some of which might even be possible. So let's zoom in from our entire southern Colorado service area to look more specifically at the region represented here today, the Southwest. This region is made up of the 5 mountainous counties west of Wolf Creek Pass, Archuleta, La Plata, San Juan, Dolores, and Montezuma, and it includes territories belonging to the Ute Mountain Ute, Southern Ute, and Dene tribes, with historical ties to the ancestral Puebloan and Apache tribes as well. In this Southwest area, that food insecurity experience scale we talked about shows up a little bit differently. 50% of neighbors in this region reported severe food insecurity, which is 4 points less than southern Colorado overall. On the survey, 9.8% of neighbors across southern Colorado reported experiencing disrespect from staff or volunteers at a food pantry. In the Southwest, that number is 5.7%, which is the lowest in our service area. Neighbors also answered questions about barriers that prevented them from accessing free food. 74.3% of neighbors identified transportation as a major issue. That's these first 2 columns taken together. One neighbor commented, I have a difficult time getting the food home. Though also transportation related, this response was the second highest category in the Southwest at 44%. The next highest category in the Southwest is that the site ran out of food at 25.7%. The high number of responses in La Plata County is mostly because out of the 70 total neighbor survey responses in the Southwest, 61 of them reported zip codes in that county. When asked about the factors affecting food insecurity, food cost was the top response across the board. usually followed closely by inflation. Unlike the rest of our service area, however, neighbors in the Southwest identified unemployment as the second most significant factor at 54%, which is higher than transportation at 46%, and both housing and inflation, which each earned 41% of responses. 8% of neighbors visiting partners using CIMSE in the Southwest reported a zip code from a different county than the partner agency. This number is relatively low overall in the Southwest, but Dolores County shows a 33.9% out of county rate, which is comparatively very high. When we asked neighbors about their race and ethnicity, some interesting points came to light. We asked this question to look for discrepancies in proportionality in order to ensure equity. In a more perfect world, the percentages of ethnicities that exist in a geographical area would match the ethnicities of people visiting food pantries. That would mean that the need is proportionate if the percentages match. So we compared responses from CIMSE and from our survey to census data, and the results showed that in most cases, these percentages do match, with a few notable exceptions. In the Southwest, both CIMSE and survey data show a significantly higher percentage of people identifying as American Indian or Alaska Native, which is the data currently driving our new culturally relevant food working group that's based in La Plata County. In addition, CIMSE data shows a higher proportion of people identifying as Hispanic or Latino, but survey data shows a lower percentage, which makes it pretty difficult to draw a conclusion from this information. Despite the disproportionate responses, however, there's clearly a high percentage of people identifying as Hispanic in the Southwest, which may also be worth considering when looking at culturally relevant foods. Our survey also collected responses from partners. Here are some comments from partners here in the Southwest region about their frustrations and challenges. I want to point out that all of these comments are about partners wanting to do more for their neighbors. Partners want more resources so that they can expand services and meet neighbors' needs more effectively. Consistently, the highest concerns from both responses and comments were about food and funding. This chart shows the various sources of funding reported by partners on the survey. Grants, churches and nonprofits, government, food drives, mailings, websites, none at all, and other. Here's that same chart for the Southwest. Proportionally, there's more funding coming from churches and nonprofits in this area, but the percentages are fairly close to the Southern Colorado as a whole. When asked about the sustainability of their pantry, 80% of partners indicated that they have plans and resources in place to continue their services. However, about 50% of agencies indicated that some kind of change was needed soon to continue serving neighbors. This slide shows another example of why geography matters. So, for example, while 59.9% of the total population of our service area across Southern Colorado is in Colorado Springs, El Paso County receives only 43.8% of the total pounds distributed and has only 36.9% of our partners. Because it's a densely populated urban area with more access to a variety of resources, fewer larger partners can meet the needs of that population. By contrast, the Southwest has only 8% of the total population and 7.9% of the food insecure population of our entire service area, but receives 7% of the total pounds. Oh, that's the Southeast. Sorry. 8% of the total population, 7.9% of the food insecure population, but receives 7% of the total pounds and has 11.2% of total partners. It makes sense that the Southwest has proportionally more partners because geographically, the Southwest has a lot of small towns separated by mountains and mountain passes. So the need for more smaller agencies makes sense. In order to achieve our goal of equity, we have to consider the unique issues the geography of our state provides. So we've learned a lot from our neighbors and partners, but I want to be clear, it's still not enough. The data is not complete, it's not nearly comprehensive enough, and it doesn't cover all of the areas we wanted to hear from. But what we did get is a snapshot and enough information to both show the things that are currently going well and to highlight some opportunities for growth. So based on what we've been hearing from our partners even before the service area assessment, one of our major goals has been that we need to be in touch more often, more consistently, more intentionally, with more resources, and in more creative ways. So please know that our heart is to hear from you, to keep our finger on the pulse of what is happening in your corner of the world, and to continually find ways to serve you better. Because of what we've heard from you, we've been adding new strategies to our repertoire to make this happen. The agency hotline, video messages, partner agency coalition meetings, yearly summits in multiple locations, monthly updates from your regional manager, community listening sessions. And if you're using either SimSI or one of our alternative systems, you've probably heard from me far more often than you were hoping you would need to. But how do we make sure? Not just that you're hearing from us, but that we're hearing from you and from our neighbors. What can we do to make sure that the voices we are hearing aren't just the ones in our heads or the loudest ones in the room, but that we are consistently, regularly, and equitably listening to all of the people that we serve? We want to become a community-driven organization. We want you, our partners, our neighbors, our community members to be driving the bus, not just passengers on it. We want neighbors who visit our partner pantries to be able to tell us directly what foods and kinds of experiences they're looking for. And we want you, our partners, to know just how much we value your opinion as the experts we lean on to accomplish our mission. So the service area assessment indicated several areas of focus, and based on community feedback, we've narrowed it down to 3 major priorities for this coming year: advocacy, culturally relevant food, and an agency academy. So what do these terms mean? Each of these could mean a whole lot of different things. For example, advocacy could mean advocating for our neighbors to have better information about services and access to services. It could mean advocating to local and federal government entities about our neighbors' needs. It could mean collecting neighbor stories and feedback to drive decision-making. Culturally relevant food could mean easily digestible foods for our senior populations. It could mean foods that don't require kitchens or can openers to prepare for our unhoused populations. It could mean foods that are culturally appropriate and significant for our Hispanic and Native populations. It could even include foods that are specifically tailored to medical diets. And the Agency Academy. This could mean training for partners by neighbors about crafting a more positive neighbor experience. It could mean facilitating conversations between our partners and other organizations in your communities for more effective local collaborations. It could mean training in best practices led by some of our more experienced partners. And it could mean workshops on fundraising and grant writing, maybe even led by some of you. Since we want to be a community-driven organization, we're asking you to join us in this work. A steering committee made up of care and share staff, partners, volunteers, and neighbors has already formed and is currently working on their plan of action. This involves creating multiple working groups across our service area who are then doing the hard work of researching and choosing the best path forward for each of these priorities. Working groups consist of teams of Care and Share staff, partners, neighbors, and community members, and are addressing each of these priorities as they relate to specific communities. The first round of working groups have kicked off in Alamosa for the agency, for the advocacy group. An agency academy group has formed virtually and will be reaching out to all of you. And a group focused on culturally relevant food has been formed in Durango and is hopefully going to be meeting more frequently in the next few weeks. In other words, we are letting our community decide what we do, which means we don't really know yet what these plans will look like, and that's on purpose. This process involves a lot of people, and if you'd like to play a part, we would love your help. Scan this QR code or fill out the form that's linked in the email you received, and we will connect with you about more details. Thank you so much for joining us today for this presentation, and we will hear from you soon.